That'll be all.
Right. Hello, everybody. ¿Cómo va? Um, yes, I am doing well. I'm sort of at a retreat by myself. I'm house sitting for a friend, and I'm so glad to have this time to just be mostly in my own head and in my own process. Um, and I'm, yeah, working on my website and reading a lot of books on interspecies communication. One really cool one called Interspecies Performance, and also a book about magic and ecology by David Abram. So, yeah, taking this time now to prepare for the residency and sort out my online persona. Yeah, I don't know who's actually here. Maybe there's some. I don't know. It's in one new face. EXEUNT. Is that how you? Hello. We haven't met before, but I am a artist, philosopher from Norway. Been an expat for many years, and now I live in the Netherlands. And I work or try to find myself in the intersection between philosophy, nature, and the arts. Yeah, that's a bit about me.
Cool. I guess I'll go. Yeah, there's so many points of resonance, whatever. Uh, yeah, happy to be here. So, like, is everybody here sort of a member of Sympoiesis, or? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's not exactly a team like
Yeah.
in a conventional way.
Yeah.
It's more like it's more like a cohort or something like a cluster of people that are interested in this. And this is something that has been happening for years, years. It's not something related, even related to Web3. Web3 is a recent thing to Sequoias. So go on, man.
Great. Yeah. So let's see. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm calling from Portland, Oregon. I just sort of was like set to be to do basically like a comparative literature like PhD, and sort of stuff blew up, and I ended up leaving the East Coast and coming out to the West Coast where things are very different, and sort of was uh, found some friends that were doing the Web3 thing from a leftist perspective, uh, with some anarchist undertones that was interesting to me. And at that point, I realized that, I guess I consider myself like an academic exile, like maybe a like applied philosophy mercenary. Like I'll go anywhere where they'll let me, where someone finds it useful to talk about, to do concept smithing, you call it. Um, in the process of like the past 3 or 4 years, I've also been doing some community organizing. We set up a warehouse, like a collectively run warehouse in town here, and we were sort of responsible for the meme Ethereum localism. We've been trying to get that going to sort of tip the direction of the ship of what that element of Web3 is, more towards municipalist or localist design. Yeah, we put together a local DAO summer, which I guess Tim said he'd uh, attended. Yeah, so in terms of research, my more recent project has been what we call the Open Protocol Research Group, kind of in the context of summer protocols, but not exactly related. We were trying to work through an idea of what would be the equivalent of open source, of like free and open source web, decentralized web. What does that look like? I guess the main focus for me has been urban spaces. So what does that look like in urban spaces? And it sort of ended up being a research project in which I was both interviewing people in town and getting to know a lot of collectives, while also doing a lot of just sort of, I don't want to say like deep archival research, but at least looking at 20th century history. And attention was drawn towards LSD movement, towards the dance scene in UK in the 1990s, and towards the S&M scene in San Francisco. And the premise being that, there's a these things were all underground in a certain way, and so they resulted in the circulation of these protocols. Don't erect institutions, erect protocols, because that's all you can do when you are legally or culturally marginalized. So the initial emphasis was on these protocols are open source, they're open-ended, meaning take this asset and do what you will with it. That this isn't meant to be instrumentalized towards any ideological goal. And then I realized that there's those two elements, but then I also said that they're divergent. Anyways, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but the point is that what became to focus at the end of that work was that what's going on with these cultural undergrounds that's maybe more interesting than the protocol element is the fact that they entail economic organization around understandings of reality. Like, I guess you would just say an ontology that is very, very foreign to institutional discourse. And I started to feel that it had to do with a kind of, I don't know if animism is the right word. For those familiar with Deleuze or Bergson, it may have something to do with what they call the virtual. But essentially, if you're going to a rave in 1994, United Kingdom, you're getting a phone call at the last minute of the location of it, and you have to go on a fucking adventure to end up there. And you'll find when you get there a lot of coordination, a lot of aesthetic will drawn in the direction of what you would almost call like a visitation, like trying to prepare the way for a visitation from something. And anyone who's been to those things or knows those cultures knows that there's always the feeling of it's very agential. Will this thing show up or not? Will the vibe, will the creature visit, or will it just be a dud? Because all you can do is prepare the way. So anyways, that got me thinking more about different types of agency, and how, and basically outside of institutions, what are the ways that that people have been organizing themselves around exotic agencies and economic relationships with exotic agencies. And that sort of took me in the direction of we can get into it if anyone's interested. Some physics stuff. There's a book called Meeting the Universe Halfway that I'm blanking on the name. And there's also a woman named Maya Berkowitz who has some cool theories that have to do with different types of agency that have to, physics conceiving of reality being a sort of unstable field that's made up of different agencies, and that the attention that you give to different agencies sort of constitutes the world that you're in, something like this. Bruno Latour, actor network theory, is also really, really important to that. But as I was thinking about what it means for undergrounds to communicate with other types of agencies, it became clear that the most immediate and obvious, and also sort of quickly moving field because of AI, is interspecies communication, and that the way that people outside of institutions have organized economic and consensual relationships with other species is at least as compelling, if not more, than anything going on in those raves. So yeah, so that's what sort of led me here. I realized that just that there's a literature, a pretty serious academic literature asking these questions, engaging these questions. I guess the final thing I'll say is that as I've been, Michael Levin has been very important in my thinking in this, who does, he's a biologist and he thinks about multi-scale intelligence. Thinking through that lens, like, it's clear that any sort of interspecies democratic or economic relationship is going to be limited by the fact, like, you can't build a totalizing system around it because there's no, unless you're going to impose a lot of arbitrary logic on it that would be restaging the same humanist issues that you're trying to get away from, you're going to run into like just a cascading like infinity of just of different creatures at different levels with potentially many of them with mutually exclusive interests. And that makes me think that any sort of politics or economic organization with happening on an interspecies basis has to be anarchist or maybe mutualist. You know, it has to be more about emergent networks rather than from any totalizing rights-based system. I think, but I'm open to, yeah, I'm just really interested in exploring that, and hopefully not just as an intellectual exercise, but as something that can be acted out, which I'm really, like, I was just looking at the Gibbets page and I'm really excited to see the stuff that's been, you know, the real material products that have been coming out that happen more on the level of senses than on the level of discourse. So.
Yeah, it's going to be nice, folks, for us to give a round of appreciation, just our impressions, right? And any questions that we might have to him, I'll kick the ball. Well, man, very interesting. What I can say is that it's not even early stage. We're talking about something that is still extremely embryonic, like. You know, this is a very fringe exploration and talks about it. And the AI generation scene kind of accelerated a little bit, but still there's a lot of scattered pieces all over, you know, and we're just trying to make a sense of it. Like in our cases, by creating an artifact. So this AI avatar of Rio Sagrado here is the material thing, is artifact that serves as a Kundalini, you know, a Kundalini line for us to understand how people react to it, and how people come around with it, and with curiosity, and how we can really start to have a communication, interspecies communications. But in this exactly case that Danilo is going to explain better for you, we are surfing on the wave around personhoods, you know, personhoods of rivers and something like that. But you know, mountains, rivers, and this is a thing out there, and yeah. So that's my primary reaction to all the things that you said. It's very interesting how you know, like a bumblebee, go there, and colonize here, colonize there. Yeah, I felt something like that. So yeah, I pass to you, Ingrid. I feel that you want to say something, Ingrid. So cool.
I don't know. I have so many I have so many thoughts bubbling up. Thank you for sharing what you work with. I don't know your name or how you would like to be called, but what's your name?
You can call me James.
James, yes.
Yeah,
Hi,
this is as I was saying earlier, I published pseudonymously, but
yeah,
my name is not a secret. So
okay, cool. Yeah, one thing that struck me was what you said about the like what kind of system or shape would it take if we were to compare it with the different things that humans have experimented with. figuring out how to relate socially. And you mentioned maybe anarchist, or was it mutualist? You said could be a better fit for that kind of messy, unpredictable unknown that we're heading into. And yeah, I thought just that was very interesting to think more about, yeah, what like what would this even look like? Because it's going to be, as you say, a lot of conflicting interests that will emerge from this. So yeah, that was the one of many things that stuck out to me.
I want to say really briefly that a sort of illustrative example that I've been thinking about is Harriet Tubman, who had like very rich relationships with not just like the animal world, but just reading a lot of different like patterns and sort of like a networked agency, was able to establish these networks, but like towards a goal of their own freedom and the freedom of those around them in a situation where there was a totalizing law of the land that made those actions like just drops in a bucket, but that ended up being powerful and consequential. And so to me, that's an anarchist style of thinking about how sort of individual actions and a logic of just encounters can fly or can operate against stuff that's more totalizing.
So can you say her name one more time? Harriet.
Oh, yeah, she's like a school Harriet Tubman.
Tubman?
Yeah, she's like a like every elementary school kid in the United States.
Oh, right.
Daughter. Yeah, sorry, it didn't occur to me that maybe, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Harriet Tubman. I'll look her up. She's all new to me.
Like the Underground Railroad, basically freeing slaves around.
Oh, okay. Now, yes, I do know who she is. Yes. Now I was just putting her in another category, but yes, I have heard about her. Thank you.
You were looking for the radical philosopher Harriet Tubman, probably based on the context of the call here.
Launch him.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I really enjoy listening to your descriptions and your thinking. I'm really excited to meet you based on what you're exploring and the what I have to imagine are the underlying motivations or aesthetic sense that makes those directions interesting and productive for you. I think I'm as excited by that because it's obvious that you didn't just sort of pick this up off the shelf. You've sort of searched and found your own way to these things, and so that's exciting. And so as much excited by the impetus and the motivations that one infers might drive the search as the actual material that we tend to have both landed on and its content. So that's interesting. And I missed maybe one of the names you mentioned, but I was looking at the book you talked about meeting the universe halfway, and that sounded really exciting. What the name isn't in my head yet, Karen Barat or something like that. Is studying, and I just read that, and it's like right at the efficient frontier of my own sort of preferences around exploring these concepts. So really excited about that, and in particular, what this interaction or interactivity or intra-action. I just love that. I think that sort of quantum entanglement metaphor and sort of the relational is exactly what will be underpinning some important phase shifts in ontological advancement, for addressing these complexes of problems and things that people want to try to move past. and be able to have better equipment conceptually and technically and socially and everything else available to them to work through. And I agree with you that the toolkit that she's talking about in that book, along with the sort of things that are around it, is a really good toolkit. Real, yeah.
I mean, there's a proposal that by the second person mentioned, Maya Berkowitz, that that if we were to take if we were to take a measurement from an asteroid that had left the solar system, that we would find a different cosmic microwave background, because there just is no consistent universe that, you know, and I think that has implications for how we relate to creatures, to recognize that that potentially we may, you know, anyways, it may be something like literally traveling through the many worlds when you interact or go on a journey with like a different with a different species, and that the world is just inherently unstable, and despite what like the surveillance state that we live in, whatever unity it wants to impose. So
Yeah, sorry. I also loved your totalizing. I haven't heard people speak in those terms, but it's been ringing in my ears, like the sort of the the problems created by universalizing and totalizing kind of concepts, and this, you know, hegemony of like, you know, when a set of ideas come up and you want to just apply it across the board, as though there's no texture or to the world or reality, you know, or situations and things like that, as though you can just have this totalizing sort of conceptual set of things that, and to me, yeah, that's just great. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't make him a lot of sense or anything. I guess it's mostly just an aesthetic appreciation of anticipating, you know, the benefits of that kind of an approach. Imminence is the word that I keep thinking of ringing in my ears, right? And that's what I like about Deleuze and those guys, right? Is you know, takes bottom up to next level. You know, we talk about, oh, top down, bottom up, and we're going to balance and mix the two. And by virtue of adding the bottom up now as a novelty, almost, we're going to achieve some kind of resilience, or succeed better at being a kind of in tune with nature or reality in the things that we might impose artificially. You know, so but immanence and how Deleuze and those guys speak about it, which seems to also kind of arrive at that interaction concept, and sort of that notion of the, you know, the emergence of that agential coming out of the interaction. I liked what she said in the, I just scanned the little Wikipedia thing on what her ideas were, but the sort of removing a little bit from the individualistic perspective while retaining but conceiving of agency in a relational sense. I thought was brilliant and rich, and I'm excited to think further along that line.
Danilo?
There's so much, huh? Like Team and Ingvild, I appreciate James, the perspectives you are bringing embedded in your speaking, in terms of the sort of, let's say, organizing frameworks that would make most sense when considering interspecies governance or whatever. We often say symbiocracy, by whatever name it is. Yeah, I haven't thought much about, like, I haven't considered much that in light of anarchism. Or more important yet, you know, some kind of route that would take us away from, yeah, surveillance capitalism, or just culture hegemony. Yeah, it's very interesting to consider these things under the light of what you're bringing. And I mean, it's difficult to conceive symbiocracy on itself, right? Because I feel like we just, or at least for myself, I can't really picture it. And I guess that's why I'm tinkering with artifacts, as Vinicio said, just so I can start creating some kind of sense and imagination for it. Because as of now, the way human beings have been relating to other species is so grounded on a utilitarianistic and anthropocentric point of view that, and since given that I was raised embedded on that, it's difficult to sort of like find a distant vantage point to consider something that would be truly novel, because that's the feeling I have, is that it it must it must be something truly novel, for the very nature of it. And so the kind of like hints I get from existing experimentations and projects that I am aware of, I'm not sure if this whole endeavor will be going towards anti-hegemony routes. It might actually be heading on the very opposite direction and serving as a way to kind of loop wildlife into the totalitarian human systems. That's a point of attention for all of us, I guess. And I mean, the truly kind of inspiring realm that I see is a bit far away, or I don't have much close contact with it, which is indigenous and natives ways of being. But even those have been so, or at least from what I can see and touch, they have been so tempered with that it's difficult to really, as an outsider, to learn how to, account for the more than human in the human decision making, so on and so forth. So yeah, it feels like it's a wild frontier, if I may. But yeah, these experimentations with the AI avatars, and also with, as I'm seeing with the Earth Species Project, they are shedding light into how people react to these things. Namely, how people react to technology mediated interspecies communication. And from my experience so far, I would say that people's reactions swing from amazement to what's the word? Untrust. Or distrust. I think that's the word. Because there is this technology kind of intermediary that is indeed, even for myself as a developer, it's kind of a black box in some ways. Or yeah, not a black box, but yeah, it's something that it's human made ultimately, you know. So I understand how people react, or why, yeah, suspicion, yeah. I understand why people would react in that way, and that should be taken into account for sure. Yeah, I've been a bit self-critical lately. Kind of like thinking about where, in fact, the sort of like technical, scientific paradigm is leading us towards. So I think you have found me more optimistic some other times, or maybe in the future. It might be just a product of the now. Yeah.
You're great, Danilo. Come on, hang in there. Don't beat this dejected. As I was listening to you and intuiting maybe the seed of some of that, it dawned on me to point out just how artificially accelerated in the petri dish, so to speak, your work is at the moment, at this stage, and that is just the nature of things, and that the absence of an entire integrated protocol, as James might say, or being embedded and already kind of grown into a context, that can't possibly arrive like immediately first in one step. And so I think your self-criticality is a little misplaced, and maybe just a product of not appreciating just how kind of like in the moonlander capsule you are, as opposed to, you know, some, you know what I mean? You're kind of exploring
Yeah.
in a spacesuit, stepping into a different futures, right? All alone, you know, or very much alone. So, you know, don't forget that. So that's the nature of the context, not you.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, riding along with your metaphor, maybe I'm the astronaut in the spacesuit who is critical about the rocket who brought him up there, and all of the.
I think Elon Musk just heard about his critics.
Yeah, that's sort of.
Spacesuits, rockets. Yeah, he
Oh,
came back.
you
Come
cut
on.
out you cut out a little bit there, Danilo. So we missed a
Oh,
little bit.
did I? Am I back?
Yeah,
Hello.
Starlink just heard you. Being
Yeah.
critical about space exploration, you know? That's a
Yeah.
sensitive thing for a guy called Musk.
You got it. But what I would say is that riding along team's metaphor, maybe I'm the astronaut or the cosmonaut, taking the first steps out there, but who is self-critical about the rocket who brought him up there and the impacts of that rocket on, you know, the planet, so on and so forth. And that's not a critic to my work specifically in terms of the research I'm doing, so on and so forth, but it's more of like a reflection around just the backbone of our technological achievement And yeah. But anyways, maybe that's a topic for another moment. But one thing I want to mention is that, well, sort of like engaging with this work has certainly um, opened up new perceptions within myself, and I think that's something to be appreciated, and new perceptions in relation to the modern human world. But of course, that has a lot to do with the place where I've put myself in and the kind of encounters we end up having with the wildlife around here, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's that kind of journey. Yeah, that's a good analogy. It's that kind of space journey that makes you see the wonder of space, but also you must contemplate the cost of getting you there, I guess.
So my brother is like a really interesting artistic thinker, pothead, whatever. But he doesn't believe in science. You know, he literally he'll just say like, man, I think those guys are just making it up. which, which I always think is so funny. Which, you know, if you understand the mechanisms and you understand why the way peer review works and the sort of game theory behind why there's, you know, you can take seriously what when they arrive at when there's a consensus developed. But like I also just tell him like, you know, oh, like Feynman path integrals like have engineering consequences. Like we can do things, we can make things with, you know, there's outputs that are real that prove the veracity of the theory because because they allow us to do things in this world that we wouldn't be able to do. It just along with what you're saying, like yeah, I've been thinking about, or I pasted in the chat this Afro-pessimism reader, which basically calls into question. It has to do with you can tell that slavery and sort of like African American history is also like informs some of my thinking, and just the school of thinkers that later became labeled as Afro-pessimists for thinking seriously about the legacy of slavery and about in the 90s police violence and about what that means for thinking through the possibilities of reform. And they came to the conclusion that like that the mechanism behind police violence is rooted in the exclusionary nature of rights and the sense in which there's a sort of burden or like anxiety that comes with the possession of rights that means that it requires this expenditure or this like it's like this psychic drama that embodies itself in like shooting some kid 92 times because it's like it's like this fear, this anxiety and this fear about the fact that you hold this exclusive thing that others don't or may have limited access to. And I don't know if that is making sense, but I guess the point being like this feeds into what essentially eventually becomes like an important Black studies critique of liberal humanism and rights-based regimes. I like think that strategically.
We're not hearing you. Excellent. We're not hearing you.
Hi, sorry. Are we good now? Anyways, I was saying I don't want to rant, and I want to wrap it up, and then and then I was muted. Yeah, sorry. Uh, it, this leads to this Afro-pessimist train leads to a critique of rights-based liberal humanism, and I guess I'm just thinking that those two things both wrap up in the sense that, like, yeah, it's obviously really urgent and important to be doing interpretive and representative, like developing interpretive and representative technologies with other species in order to bring it up to, especially to the international stage of like a rights-based framework. And also, and let me say, I'm coming at this from a total outsider, so like this is just like stuff I've developed over the course of just a few weeks of like of thinking about this. But I think that looking at like that, thinking about that Afro-pessimism, that Afro-pessimist critique of the rights-based logic, it it is also equally important to think about how these technologies can lead to results. Like the suspicion ceases to be warranted when it's clear that this technology led us to produce something that couldn't have been produced before. You know, this unlocked a capacity, and that like maybe it's too Marxist or something, but that it makes me think that like capacities for production or like real outputs will like trump the rights-based model all the time, because valuing across species in the sense of the ability to bring something new into the world is more of a self-evident value rather than the representative abstract value of affording rights. And that at the very least maybe both sides are equally important, like in terms of strategies.
Yeah, I want to say that one of the things that we have been doing too is using speculative fiction as a vehicle to put out there those strange ideas, you know, and it's a very good attractor too. Actually, you're looking at the guys that created a kind of a guide how to create a non-human character, Ingvild and Danilo, and it's a brilliant guide. By the way, I have it in hand here. I can share with you. Would it be nice thing if you could introduce to him a little bit of this work that you created with Danilo?
Yeah, thank you. Muito obrigada for mentioning the guide. It's been a while since I've looked at it myself, so I think I have to pull it up. But it was a lot of fun, and it's a very cross-disciplinary guide. And I've actually been playing with different renderings of it for very different audiences. Everything from like fifth graders in Norway to academics from Asia, at a very dry academic conference, trying to challenge them with this guide. And then in Germany next year, we will take it to another level and put it into practice. But I don't know, like what would be most interesting to draw from this here. Daniel, if you have any thoughts that like spring to mind, because the guide is quite sort of wide. Let's see, my internet is a bit slow. Or did you post it here already? And then I can just pull it from. Let's see. Oh yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, my internet is very slow. I struggle to upload to find the guide. Let's see.
Put it in the chat, Ingrid. The guide is in the chat. I think that we lost Ingrid for a bit.
So we did talk about this at the time, James, and it's a early stage of this work of creating such a guide, but the conversation explored different ways that, kind of maybe speaking in the direction of Danilo's discomfort, ways that this could reverse on itself, or not, that the world and the socialization or the sociality and sort of exploring and doing project work around this sort of thing with the river avatar and things could could be distorted and just turned into something that's antithetical to what is animating the activity in the first place. So that's what the guide, some of the discussions early on around the guide were like, oh, I think one of the things that came up here, Ingvild's back, was, maybe it's important that people not become too identified with the natural entity themselves in case that, something happens to the natural entity. There needs to be maybe a little critical distance that is offered by the methodology of creating the character or not. I don't know. So these kinds of questions, like, and the idea that it's an emanation from that through the avatar from the natural entity, things like that. I was filling in Ingvild as best I could.
Oh, thank you, Tim. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know what happened. In the meantime, though, I was able to pull up the guide. So I don't know, yeah, what you have been up to since I was away. But one thing that has come from the initial experiments with the guide in real life with humans only so far has been that it's very important to create spaces where people can use their senses and have sort of an embodied feeling of otherness, or creating sort of pop-up synergies where they feel that they are co-creating some kind of creature. So yeah, in some forms it has been creating individual non-human characters. In other workshops that I've led, we created sort of a non-human character in groups. So, and then there is the digital version of this, where we linked it up with a software that used to be free. So there's always this kind of going back and forth between the very physical and then the embodied, and then also having a sort of a digital avatars, and sort of the paradox of the road back to nature being artificial sometimes. But I feel that can also be very impactful, because it's also another way to get you out of your everyday way of thinking and relating to other beings, whether that is AI or a river or the neighborhood cat. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has thoughts. This is a bit all over the place, but
Yeah, Ingvild, me and Vanya, we are actually using the guides to create new non-human characters for the speculative fiction called Superfluous Man. That Tim and Danilo is part of it too. So it kind of hot a little bit, hot in the sense that it stopped a little bit this year, but it's still out there. We're going to continue. We already have the first and the second episode, so as soon as we regain, we start to work on it again, I will call you. I think that you're gonna love it.
Please do. I would love to read it. I'm very excited to hear more about it. Please share.
Yeah, one last thought, guys, before we wrap up here, and is that we are always very excited, EXEUNT, to make contact with people that are really doing, are really doing the work, really deep diving in it, and at the same time with people that are not, right? Because you need those two dimensions, people that doesn't have a clue about it and people that are deep diving in it. So you can have a type of horizon a scale or a horizon to understand how near your work is possible to be appropriated, culturally appropriated by folks in general, not only by the bubble or by those people that are working on it. So we have this type of dynamics here. So in this sense, myself particular, in the last 2 years, I have been developing a protocol called ReRe, regenerative resources, and it's around the practice, the biomimicry practice of this mutualistic way that nature, generates itself resiliently. You see, so we have this practice to ignite and co-create a common pool of shareable resources, where any type of resources, tangible or non-tangible, is okay to be part of the pool, and we don't indexate it by money, by fiat, or even crypto. Any type of resources is welcome, and we stimulate people to to mirror themselves, to pair themselves, to interact. The main technology is to interaction, and to do mutual peer-to-peer access of all sorts of resources that you can imagine. And it has been very interesting because it's non-organizational. You don't have any type of organizational framework behind it. It's purely interactive, purely organic, and very, very, very much peer-to-peer. And it has been a very, 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 very interesting experience that it can be a topic, how said Danilo, for another day. But I just want to throw that out for you to see the range of things that we have been, exploring and talking about. So yeah, that's it.
Does this correspond to the graph that I've seen on the website? Is it related?
Are you talking about Syncup website?
Yes.
Yeah. That graph is what you said. That is a Kumu, KUMU graph, right? It's a network graph that Danilo has been doing since forever. You're going to see a lot of people there. Yeah, it doesn't have a direct relation with it, but Syncup itself is part of ReRe as a cultural protocol. Yeah.
And do you have a link or anything about this work? Oh, so yeah, ReRe.
Yeah, we are creating a AI agent where you can talk about ReRe. It's not done yet, but as soon as we have the first version of it, I'm going to release it. So you're going to have the opportunity to speak about ReRe, the 8 paradigms that co-substantiate ReRe as this cultural Web3 regenerative protocol. So yeah, it's very interesting, man. But it's not the topic for today. So I'm just excited because our conversation went so much places, and I felt comfortable to share a little bit about this.
Well, in terms of wrapping up, I have 2 things to say. First, I would love to join, to continue to join it sounds like there's fairly regular meetings with this crew or this network.
When it comes to ReRe, yes. When it comes to Sympoiesis, it's more asynchronous than synchronous.
Okay.
It's because people relate to Sympoiesis. We have years of relationship here. We're really close friends, and each one of us here are doing different types of explorations. And even that graph that you saw in Kumu doesn't make justice to the things that we are actually exploring. If you're going to see what InkView is doing right now, is not there, right? So it became something more like a wiki, something that really.
Awesome. Well, I plan to just hang out in the Telegram, and it's really great to. It's one thing to be chatting with people or seeing some Twitter posts, but it's really great to meet and hear from people. I'm not big on brand, like I'm kind of anti-brand, but they serve the purpose that they do, and it makes sense to name things in many cases. And some friends. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Open Civics. Sounds like no.
Yeah, I am. I don't know the guy. I don't know the guy, but I know that the guy behind it is Benjamin Life. Yes, it's him. Yeah, I'm aware.
I know about it from Web3 kind of movements, but not in details.
Well, I mean, I'm obviously, the big game is to be able to, I could sit in a room and do research and play with ideas like this, but the point is one of the points is to, make things that are useful, and build networks, but also to receive some funding that makes it sustainable work. Benjamin has done a great job of triangulating a lot of attention and connection with Gitcoin in that universe, with Giveth and the other standard sort of Web3 inputs, as well as more recent stuff around BioFi. And it's sort of like hush hush, but it seems that BioFi world has a pretty huge war chest that is going to be progressively deployed. And I think that given what just happened with the American election, that's only going to intensify the feeling of responsibility and need for people to do work or to be supporting work that happens outside of the context of government institutions. In any case, so they are sort of setting up this infrastructure. I'm pretty close with the sort of circle that's building the infrastructure over there. And I plan to, they have a whole setup for building out projects. They're trying to develop a knowledge commons that then they'll be able to fund contributions to. I am considering, or I would like to. I know that there's a reading circle, a reading circle going on here, or like a progressive sort of like book club. I am framing up an idea for. I would love your feedback on it. Essentially, coming up with something like a syllabus or just a broad reading list of trying to be refined so it's not an endless list, but one that can be quite long. And rather than having a weekly or monthly reading, have everybody be taking their own paths through it, and have a sort of a wiki or a notion that can be notated, and that once it's been through some cycles and the majority of the text in there are notated in an action-oriented way, then those things can be those notations can be sort of collated into some specific experimental ideas. I guess the point being that putting it through the Open Civics machine gives it pretty good likelihood being able to receive funding inputs both at the period of the sort of like open-ended canon exploration, but then more so in the period of actually developing experimental ideas and then potentially carrying them out and documenting and doing case studies, etc. So that's sort of where I'm at with, and you guys, it's seen that that Will Zoll, who's been thinking about rivers as hyper beings, and Austin Wade Smith, who's been thinking about conviviality, and then obviously Gregory Landois, who sort of started Regen Network, are all sort of interested in participating in this sort of reading circle. So yeah, I guess I wanted to invite you in. I'm curious if funding has been like, if y'all have been able to get robust funding for the work you're doing, because it's not so much.
Yeah, you see, Danilo was invited to go to Suzalo, the first Suzalo experience. He was there. He actually made a presentation. So we can talk about it. He already has a direct relationship with the Suzalo round and Gitcoin. And via ReRe, we are trying to amplify that. And it's interesting you touch on that because this is actually something that we are going to sit to talk about. So very interesting that you came with this type of thing for us to discuss. For Danilo, if you're still there, man, it would be nice to share your experience in Suzalo.
Sure thing. So yeah, pancakes are ready. I can talk now. So yeah, many things to be touched at. Let me just grab the phone holder. So I first want to address the kind of book club sort of idea. There are two things that surface while hearing you, James. So first one is that a long while ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, some of us here, well, Vinicius and team were part of that. We didn't know Ingvu yet, but we actually wrote a proposal for the collective Metagov, and the proposal was basically a research project that would sort of ground us on first principles to consider, what symbiocracy would look like. And that proposal was basically a cycle of study of certain materials we had selected. So there is like a preliminary list, let's say. I can link that up either here or over Telegram, or if I'm not on my computer, so it's hard to find, but if Vinicio has that.
I think I have it here in hands. Wait a minute.
So that's one thing. Unfortunately, that proposal didn't get approved at that time, but it stands there as a resource. The second thing, and this is more recent and is an actual ongoing effort, and this is something I will tell everyone here. I think only Ingville knows about it. I've recently met this guy who is actively working on a seminar series where he is engaging with a lot of materials from both animal psychology to human anthropology, all the way to urban design, because he's kicking off this project that seeks to develop a experiment called Shaktiville in India, which seeks to be the sort of how do you say, interspecies city or village in terms of cross-species deliberation. So this seminar series it's currently happening. They have weekly meetings. I haven't been able to participate in all of them, but the ones that I've been to have been really interesting. And you have people doing actual work in groups, sort of like to design this Shackteville experiment. I will link that up here. My intention was to invite Shartan, which is the guy working on this. I wanted to invite him to this call, but I kind of got behind schedule for that. But here's somebody very accessible and could maybe be a resource for what you're saying, James. Let me find the link here to Shackteville. I've shared this with Inkville a while ago. Yeah, here it is. So this is all happening under this organization called Socrates. So here's the link to the multi-species studio. Yeah, that's what they're calling it. Definitely check that out. It's really high quality sort of content curation from what I'm seeing asynchronously. In terms of funding, so all of the work we've been doing has basically been funded through Geekpoint and primarily through, oh yeah, that's the proposal we submitted to Metagov. So all of the work we've been doing, especially the ReRe avatar, has been funded through Geekcoin, primarily the Zuzalu rounds. Are you familiar with Zuzalu or Zuzalu, whatever they're calling it?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of the people that spend a lot of time there, especially Kyle Smith, who's tends to be like at every event or at every gathering. My sense is that it's like half of like the best, smartest people in the world that you would ever want to meet, and then a bunch of like fascists all hanging out in the same in the same room. So
yeah, it's both marvelous and scary, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's an interesting way to. But so yeah, as Vinny said, I was there in Montenegro the first time. Conflicting experience, but it did open up this opportunity for funding through the Zuzalu rounds. So these are Gitcoin rounds that Vitalik sponsors for the continuation of the Zuzalu experience in terms of the development of technology that was born out of Zuzalu and sort of like benefits the Zuzalu ecosystem and the continuation of Zuzalu events. And so in that context, I've been sort of like reframing this avatar idea in different ways. The latest of it is the creation of a kind of crypto token for these avatars that the AI avatars could use in order to incentivize local action benefit of their source entities. So in the case of the ReRe avatar, it could incentivize sort of like cleanups, trees, or managing the local fauna in certain ways that would, benefit input, because these avatars also, one aspect of them is that they had a generating site. But that part of yet, and this is something that, as far as I can get, so exploring the kind of like economic presence of the beyond human. Anyways, so that's how we've been sort of like rolling this. Other than that, it's been pure passion, I would say. But yeah, all sort of like financial incentive. Not all. We've rejected shell funding from Gitcoin, but financial incentive is overall good in order to sustain this work. So Yeah, it would be nice to participate in some kind of open civics initiative if it comes to being.
Yeah, it's interesting, James, that you talked about open civics, because this is one of the things that when I spot Benjamin in his work with open civics and I saw what he's looking after, I I felt that other work we have been doing through the years with CPOS, as you see, is a very extensive work, would fit nice with the open civics dynamics. You see what he's seeking as blueprints, right, for open civics. So yeah, that's one thing. And as Tim put, this ReRe, this Web3 cultural regenerative protocol, it has been a type of umbrella, a type of ecology of projects, people, and ecosystemic interfaces that is very broad, as Tim put it. So we make connection with all sorts of projects. Even Agroforestal from Diogo Jorge is part of it, as Green Fuel Brazil is part of it. So and Cipoesis too is becoming part of this cultural, this wide cultural protocol. And the thing about it is not technological per se. It's about culture, cyber culture. You see, ReRe sees that we have a huge opportunity to re-signify our relationship with our cyber relationship with internet. So not to see us as users, not to see us as only data providers or generators of data, but see us as a co-creator of the so-called, Web3, right? But in a very regenerative way, where we can even blueprint the communications, the interspecies communications, for instance, or something like that. So it's a broader conversation. It's not about what we're talking here today, but it would be nice to schedule with you another talk about it, and for you to understand how much projects are already part of it, and how it values how it values political economies like those that Will Rudnick in Kenya has been doing, with the local people there. I don't know if you know Will Rudnick from Grassroots Economics, and he has been doing for over 15 years a work with the indigenous peoples in Kenya, where the interface with monetary system is weak, is not dependent on monetary system. So we have been doing this type of work here in Brazil too. We're mapping out all this political economies that is not monetaristic, dependent of fiat economies, you see. And this is one of the works that we've been doing through ReRe. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But folks, let's wrap it up here.
Yeah.
With very, very, very nice first encounter, right? So I'll hand it to you, Ingrid, to make your final impressions and check out.
Whoa, I feel positively overwhelmed and inspired and excited to learn more about open civics and anarchism and the monetary things side of things. Yeah, just lots to think about, and I'm very happy that I stumbled upon this meeting. Thank you, Danilo. I haven't been checking my Telegram as often as I should. Just so wonderful to connect with you all. I wish we could all be in the same room and have tea together, whatever you prefer. One day it will happen. So sending you all lots of love and well wishes for all the wonderful work that you do, and looking forward to the continuation, the blossoming. Yeah, thank you.
I'll just close up and say, if there, well, for one, ditto to everything you said. As I said earlier, just like so pumped to just have this, whatever, this Zoom exchange. For one, if there's a recording of this call, I think it said somewhere someone was perhaps recording. Yes, send it my way, maybe on Telegram if that's yeah. But also, yeah, I think it takes about 45 minutes or something. But I think I guess ReRe would be the best thing to join the Open Civics Consortium, and so there's just like there's Gitcoin rounds that they hold with themselves. But like I said, I think there's in the coming year there's some pretty robust funding inputs, and yeah, I mean to sum it up, like my just being a sort of urban dive bar dweller more than someone who's hanging out in nature a lot. I'm thinking about greater than human in a way that is almost on the speculative edge as well, but so less of a specialist and not interested in being as much of a specialist when it comes to these interspecies elements. So but also I'm realizing that it's so important to the whole project. So anyways, I'm just like really amazed and impressed that that there's like years of work that have gone into this, and yeah, just like excited to find different ways for networking and for resource provisioning that to plug in those different kinds of those different advantages on the sort of like the post-human future.
All right, I will also say that I enjoyed the conversation a lot for the new perspectives it brought, and also for being a place where I could just voice out some feelings that I have been feeling and find a space of resonance in regards to the sort of state of the world we find ourselves into in terms of technical political structures out there, but also in terms of the seeds that we can plant and see germinating and hopefully one day harvest, as today I was harvesting the beans that I planted not long ago. So yeah, thanks.
Right on. Thanks. Yeah, great chat. Really enjoyed it. I think I think whether it's the natural entities, more than human, non-human, machine, man, machine, human, machine, just other material assemblies or assemblages, I guess is the right way to say it. But whether it's any of those kinds of combinations or what have you that are doing the poesis. For me, I just gonna as a piece of understanding, I'll just reiterate something that maybe I only had a chance to ever sort of say once, and maybe only to Vinicius, but it seems like an occasion to kind of mention it again, is that for me, sympoiesis also, I'm keying off your speculative comment, James. For me, it also extends well beyond these things, right? To almost like the possibility of a future ethos, about taken down to the roots of the meaning of what the word speaks to in terms of, a real generative or organic emergence becoming of new in a interactive processual kind of compound agency sense as well, so that's a fancy way to say it that succeeds in communicating very little probably, but a real simple way of saying it would be the possibility of a future ethos where perhaps people we might look at today and think, oh my goodness, they're going to fight, they'll never get along, have a place and a way that they can step into where they now can be sympoisising and in terms of a context or a cultural shift or a ethos or a place or a technology or a process or a booklet or whatever that somehow makes more possibilities and options for that kind of symbiosis in you know what I mean, as opposed to that totalizing blocky set of tools that we are stuck with presently for trying to achieve some kind of simpatico type stuff.
Okay, so that's it, guys. Pleasure to be with you all, and uh, we see when we going to be together again. Okay, we just flow with the flow. Pleasure to meet you, James. Bye, bye, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Muito prazer. Muito obrigada. Tchau.